Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where today I chat with my spirit animal, Erik Rind, who gets extra kudos from me because before we recorded the podcast, he asked me who my favourite sports team was, and when I told him Derby County, he said to me, without hesitation, they used to play at the baseball ground, right? So, now for my international listeners, my team is slightly unfashionable, and they left the baseball ground, I think, way back in 1997. So the fact he knew this all the way over in Maryland instantly escalated him to my favourite guest status. And like I said a few moments ago, his name is Erik Rind, and he's the owner of ImagineBC, which is a technological solutions company that believes it is the steward of its users' data, but not the owner. Bit of an antidote to everything that your Google and Facebooks are doing at the moment. And it's aiming to promote peer-to-peer commerce within its collection of decentralised mobile applications. And trust me, this is a great conversation where me and Erik discuss issues concerning data privacy, the data economy, misuse of personal data by big tech companies, and also the murky world of third-party data brokers and that mad dash to regulate GDPR and heightened by scrutiny by governments, both foreign and domestic, and of course that ever-changing landscape of consumer behaviour. We got a lot to pack in the next 30 minutes, so let me beam your ears all the way to Maryland, where I have a seat ready just for you, so you can be part of this conversation too. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Erik. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. First, thanks for having me on, Neil. So my name's Erik Rind. I'm CEO of a company called ImagineBC, and ImagineBC focus these days is in trying to get people to understand that they need to take back control of their personal information, and even more importantly, that they're entitled to participate in the profits that information produces. And when we talk about personal data, we're really talking about more than just, my name and where I live and location and what my heartbeat is, but also your creativity, your intellectual property. The model of me giving my intellectual property away for nothing and waiting for the tech giants to tell me what the value of it is, it's a model that's had its time and really needs to go away, and everybody needs to be compensated fair value for what they create. So ImagineBC is building a ecosystem and mobile application that will hopefully allow individuals to be able to easily and efficiently start to take back control, and more importantly, hopefully make a few dollars.
Fantastic. And
or pounds for your side of
it. And I'm quite excited about talking a little bit more about what you do and delving deeper into this subject. But before we do that, can I ask that you set the scene and tell me a little bit more about the issues concerning data privacy, the data economy, and ultimately the misuse of personal data by these big tech companies?
Sure. Lots of points to cover there.
Yes.
So in fact, the way you said it is, the issue of data privacy, this one really gets to me a little bit because, clearly on your side of the pond, we have GDPR now, and you're way ahead of the United States. Here in the States, it's starting to be debated in a couple of our states, California and Vermont, are moving legislation through. But what kills me about it is it's that, what, do you think you're going to give me back my data?
Yeah.
Years ago, my fingerprints were hacked out of the Office of Personnel Management. Nobody can tell me they're ever giving me my fingerprints back. Once your data is out, it can't be put back. Yeah. So is it really a question of data privacy? Well, maybe for future generations it will be. When a child is born and let's say their entire life lives on the blockchain and only their parents own the key to their identity until they're 18, and then the parent turns over the key to their identity, now we're talking about true data privacy. Up until that point, which is clearly many years away because it would require government to be totally involved, then we really shouldn't be talking about data privacy. We have to be talking about, I use the word control. Yes, my data is out there, but who should have control over it? Should the tech giants be allowed to use it without properly monetizing me? Or should I be able to make the decisions over my data and therefore at least share in the profits that data produces. So for me, it's, the genie's out of the bottle. I'm never getting my identity back. I live with that. I just want control of my identity again. And more importantly, I want a fair share of what my identity is creating. So I think that was number one, and maybe blend it into your number two question as well, which is it's really all about control. And right now, we like to say we're the raw material of the tech giants' factories. We march our data in, they bundle it up, sell it off, and they're keeping all the profits. And this it can't continue for a number of reasons. One, I don't believe it's fair. And secondly, I'm very concerned because there are other areas of technology, 3D printing, automation of vehicles. And when these technologies come into play, and again, there's nothing that's there's going to be a huge displacement of jobs. And if we don't find other ways for people to make money, that can create a very, very large societal problem. So one quick way is, properly monetize us for our data at least. And then secondly, we get into the area of intellectual property, which is the one that I'm really interested in. I mean, I'm an old guy, so I lived in a time where you didn't give your intellectual property away. You were always fairly compensated, or at least compensated for it. You may not have thought you were fairly, but there was always a value of your time, and you were being paid for your time. And the way I like to talk to people about this, Neil, is I say this, I start the conversation, go this way. I go, Neil, let's say you came into my office for an interview. And at the end of the interview, I said, Neil, man, I love you. I want you to start working for me on Monday. And here's how the deal's going to work. You're going to work 40 hours a week for me. And at the end of every week, I'm going to figure out how much I want to pay you.
Whoa, back up a minute.
Right? And but it gets even better. And by the way, most of the time, I'm not going to pay you anything. Right? Now, you're out the door. But the truth is, I just described YouTube's business model.
Yeah.
Now, that is insane because you just can't have that happen. And why? Well, people should be fairly compensated for their intellectual property. And secondly is we need to reestablish the middle class. The tech giants are adding fuel. I'm not going to put the whole blame of the destruction of the middle class on them, but they're certainly adding fuel to it. If we can get these creative people who are putting unbelievably interesting things out on the internet, have value to people, properly compensated, they themselves can then start to potentially create smaller cottage-style businesses as they try to get more content out. Now we have the opportunity to do what I call, which is reimagine or create a virtual new Main Street and maybe reestablish Middle America. You have to get these people properly compensated. You got to get more money in the hopes that they're not just going to spend it, but a fraction of them will be good capitalists and reinvest it back in themselves and create jobs. So that's what ImagineBC is about. It's about helping people understand that, but more importantly, putting the technology and democratizing the technology the tech giants are using to the benefit of the individual.
And what about these murky underworld of third-party data brokers too? I mean, where do you stand on these guys?
Yeah, without the Facebooks, they don't have the bandwidth to get the data themselves. They're bad. They're obviously really, really bad. And therefore, it's less likely that they will have an impact going forward if a model like ImagineBC's exists. Because if we, the individual, get control back and remain anonymous within a community, but still be able to conduct commerce with one another despite anonymity, then a third party can't target us. Or at worst case, if they did, they'd be paying us. Now, a Cambridge Analytica can't afford to pay every individual for their data. They pay a much smaller sum to Facebook, get the data, and then go wild, targeting us. So I think a model like ImagineBC's would put a serious dent. There'll always be somebody who's going to try to game the system. And that's a battle of technology. It's almost like, police with their lasers, and then you get anti-laser technology, right? It's always that little game. But you put a serious dent in that commercial enterprise because people would not be so readily, people's data wouldn't be so readily available. And secondly, the price of that type of data to be physically targeted would be too high.
So what do you think about the mad dash to regulate? And has that resulted in a positive or negative outcome? Because the reason I asked that, obviously over here in the UK, we've got the GDPR, which is overwhelmingly good, but it's also resulted in a negative browsing experience because even just reading an article on Forbes or something will require 4 or 5 clicks of selecting which cookies I can I'm willing to part with. I mean, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I think from the U.S. point of view, we're behind, as I said, that what's going on over there. So from my perspective here in the States, I think it's good and it's bad. The good is at least it's putting the issue in front of people. Yeah. I started ImagineBC 2 years ago, and if I were product ready 2 years ago, I would have been 2 years way too early. 2 years ago, people didn't even understand what was going on, right? Yeah. What the tech giants were doing with our data, what these shady third parties were doing with our data. So if I was trying to espouse what I've been espousing, just in these few minutes with you, it would have fallen on deaf ears. It just wouldn't happen. So the fact that at least government is making a conversation about this issue, that's really good. Now, the bad part is I don't believe government should try to regulate it because I don't think they can get to the true understanding of what the value of our data is. Here on our site, we've got Senator Warren saying the value of your data is $25 a month. There's no way the value of data is just $25 a month. Well, at the same time, we've got Jaron Lanier in the New York Times saying that your personal data is probably worth as much as $20,000 a year. So the market will determine what the value of your data is, and therefore you can't put regulation in that will stymie the market before it even exists. We have to let the market determine what the proper value of our data is. We've never seen it. All we know is that, Google and Amazon and Facebook are these stupidly wealthy companies. And that's based on a lot of it's based on our information. So I love the fact that it's in conversation. I'm scared of the fact that you just said is when government gets involved, they tend to make things overly complex. Entrepreneurs, tech people, we know who our user is, and we have to work on making things incredibly easy for them to do, but still solve the same problem. So good on them for the conversation. Try not to overregulate it.
Do you think the effects that this heightened scrutiny by governments, both foreign and domestic, what kind of effects do you think they're going to have there?
Oh, I think it's good. I mean, I think it's a positive effect. There's no question about that. This is an area that's needed government oversight for a while. Again, here on this side, the fact that the government is looking into these tech giants as monopolies, I'm for that. Again, I come from a time where to go public, you needed to have like 6 quarters of growth and profit in a row. Now you take a company like Amazon who went public, who had never made money in their lives. They just keep making money, and they kept losing money, but they kept driving the market away until finally they own the market, and now they make tons of money. That is a monopoly. They just did it to become they use monopolistic practices to become a monopoly. And we just saw it, we see it in this whole WeWork disaster. This has become the new business model. This is a destructive business model. It might be good for the few people who are involved in the inside, but for those of us on the outside, it's crushing. It's a crushing business model. So the heightened awareness of what's going on out there in the tech world and how tech businesses are building it by government, still, it's time for them to be involved. I've always thought of government as a referee. They wear the striped shirt. They have the whistle in their mouth, right? And it's a battle. It's a battle between labor and capitalism. And that battle is a good battle. And it's the government's job to blow the whistle when one side gets too far out. And right now, the capitalist side is way out of control, and the whistle needs to be blown, and the rules need to be changed, or at least enforced, and bring the game back to more of an equilibrium.
Well, huge thanks for that, Eric. I've now got a vision of Donald Trump and Boris Johnson in a stripy top with a whistle in their mouth.
They'd be drubbed out of the league.
So I'm curious, though. I mean, do you have any thoughts on the ever-changing landscape of consumer behavior as well? And is there anything that you think we should be paying particular attention to?
Yeah, that one, I'm probably not the best person to ask about that one because I am so old. The consumer behavior of the millennial generation is fascinating to me. I read a lot about it. And I read an article recently. I think, I can't remember who the author was, but it was an article, I think in Forbes magazine. And it was a brilliant article. It's because what the author did was he started off with like a day in the life, right? Think of the old Beatles song. And he had a millennial waking up, and he took you through the day in the life of a millennial and all of the different technologies and companies they touch. And the article finished off by saying, and when they've tucked themselves into their beddy bed at night, they've now dealt with companies that will have lost a collective $80 billion this year.
Wow.
Now that gets to be fascinating, right? So you have an entire generation whose life is being subsidized by private equity and venture capital, all for that model that we already know is a destructive model. And it fascinates me. I don't work that way, right? I'm an old guy. I have my patterns of life. I touch some of these companies, but that was fascinating to me. And that really is pretty interesting. And recently, of course, with WeWork going down, or at least being totally hit, the idea is there's going to be it's time to pay the piper. And if all of these companies now have to drive to profitability, then prices are going to have to go up. You can only slash so much. And if prices start to go back to where they should be in order for these companies to actually make money, then the Gen Zers and the millennials are going to have a rude awakening because their lifestyle will not be subsidized anymore. And let's get back to ImagineBC for a second. Then, wow, we better be making money from our personal data because I'm going to need a lot of extra money.
Wow, I need to hunt down that article and pop it on the show notes just for everyone listening.
I'll see if I can find it for you, and I'll send it over to you, Neil. It was a brilliant article. The author he just wrote it brilliantly. I ordered my meal from DoorDash. I took the Uber to work. I took a Lyft. It was just brilliant.
Oh man, yes. If you could send that over, and we'll get it in the show notes just for everyone listening as well.
Yeah, I'll try to find it for you. It was only a couple of weeks ago. It should still be out there. I mean, obviously it is out there. It's just digging it up.
Now, ImagineBC, if we just go back to that for a moment, you're a technological solutions company that believes it is the steward of its users' data and not the owner. So can you tell me a little bit more about how you're promoting this peer-to-peer commerce within its collective of decentralized mobile applications? It sounds incredibly cool.
Yes, you hit it. You could have described it even better. That's where we are. We really consider ourselves stewards of your data, right? So no individual could take on Facebook by themselves. But amazingly, what people don't understand is if 5 million of us decided to take on Facebook, they have a real problem. So, and here's why. When I tell people what I'm doing, they'll state, I get that, oh, you can't take down Google or Facebook. And I'm like, what do you mean? So much of their revenue comes from advertising dollars. That's not their money. That's advertisers' money. All you have to do is show the advertiser a better place to invest their money. Advertisers want to reach eyeballs to buy their product. They're going to go to the best place to do it. When my dad was a madman back in the 70s, you went to television, radio, and billboards. Then along came technology, and now the money is going to browser pop-up ads, text messages on your phone, all this annoying stuff, right? Show an advertiser a better way, and they'll move their money there. And what we want to say is we're the better way. Why? Because we're giving you the best of both worlds. We're still allowing you to target our audience because our audience is saying, please target me because they know they're going to be compensating. So if an advertiser spends $1 in advertising in our ecosystem, 90 cents of that dollar is going back to the very consumers they're trying to reach. That's a better message. It's not going into Mark Zuckerberg's hands, which means it won't go into Cambridge Analytica's hands. It's going back to the very consumer they're trying to reach. And we hired a behavioral science company to kind of test these hypotheses. And we built our technology along behavioral science concepts so that advertisers and our consumers will have a positive experience within our app. So, that's how you take them on, is just reroute the money. $235 billion spent in advertising in the United States alone last year. Move it someplace else, and Facebook's in deep trouble because their whole model is based on advertising dollars. They'd have to start charging for their product, and then it would be interesting to see how many people would be willing to pay for their product.
Not me, that's for one.
Not many. I'm with you. I don't think many, but yeah. So that's so yes, and so in the sense of stewardship, that's right. We're saying, look, you're not going to get rid of the technologies like AI. But instead of AI and ML being used to target us without us being compensated, ImagineBC saying, look, put your data in, share it with the community. We'll use those technologies on your behalf. And when the money rolls in, 90% of it rolls back to you.
And I love how you set out to defranchise the middleman and actually allow users to capture the maximum value from their own data. But can you tell me, it makes so much common sense, but can you tell me a little bit more about ImagineBC's revolutionary business model and how you're actually leaving a big chunk of money on the table for users and not for yourselves? Because I think that's such a sweet spot, isn't it?
Right. And connect you back to your other question too, which is so right now our focus is we just finished up our friends and family launch, and we're going through the modifications to the app based on the feedback we got for that, looking for general launch back again in December. So our initial approach is going to be to focus C and D list level social media influencers. And that's because think of their followings. They probably have 30,000 to 150,000 followers. That's like the bread and butter we're going to go after. Why? Because you have to put a lot of work in to keep your following up that level. And most of the people at that level are not properly monetizing that following. It's not fair for the amount of time they're putting in. So they're like the bread and butter for our model. So let's say you're a C-list follower. You have 120,000 followers, and you're either making no money from that following or very little, whatever the scraps YouTube wants to send you. Now you introduce ImagineBC to your following, and you say, look, I'm going to start offering some exclusive content inside ImagineBC. Come on over. Come on, join me inside ImagineBC, and you'll see some of my exclusive content. But I'm going to charge. Now, there's the big difference. I'm going to charge, let's say, $2 a month subscription to my content. So you used to get everything for free, consumer. Now I'm going to charge you $2. That's the big bridge for us. Now, here's the good news. ImagineBC, we like to say, is we're better than free. Why? We have a mechanism within our app that if you use our reward card to make purchases or pay bills, we'll actually pay you. ImagineBC will pay you back 5% of those purchase prices. So let's put it all together now. I've got a social media follower with, let's keep the numbers, 100,000 followers, and they get 50,000 of those people to follow them in. And those 50,000 people all, let's say, use our reward card to pay $100, $100 bill that they have. They use our card to pay that. We give that person back $5. Now, we've given them back $5. That's $5 more than they've ever had. Now, if they just use $2 of those dollars to pay the person they followed in fair value for their content, everybody's winning. Our user is still $3 ahead, better than free. They're $3 better than free. But now the social media person, 50,000 times 2 is 100,000. They keep 70% of that within our model. So they're making $70,000 a month. That's life-changing.
It really is. And I would imagine the biggest challenge for you guys is the whole adoption problem. How do you get people on board? How are you planning on doing that? Is there any challenges that you're having to overcome?
We haven't faced them yet because we haven't generally launched yet. So yeah. We have 4 areas where we're going after consumers. Right now, our primary focus is proving that model that I just said worked out. Yeah. If it does, that it's, we'll see starting in December, right? And I hope it does. And I think for the good of everybody, it should. If we're giving you 5, please share 2 with the person who followed you in. So the social media person just says, follow me in. So we know we have an audience now to their 100,000 users. Yeah. And if those 100,000 users, we know they have to pay some bills. So if they at least pay one bill for $100, they're going to get 5 back from us. And then it's our job to nudge them to spend the 2 over there. So if that works, that'll take off like fire. But additionally, we have other partners who are helping us build it. We've got a couple of companies who have large user bases, and we're building some functionality in that'll help essentially give them a mobile app connection between their consumer and themselves. So those will be captured audiences. And we're talking with labor unions because labor unions are a natural fit. Labor unions for over 100 years have been fighting the battle of, give me fair value for my work and benefits from, fair benefits for my work. The problem that they face now is not only they're fighting a losing battle on that front, but it's a 2-front war for them now, because now they've got another set of capitalist giants called Amazon, Facebook and Google, who are taking the value of their data as well. So you're getting hammered on the labor side, and you're also getting hammered on the data side. But what do they have? They have numbers. Can you imagine if in this country, if you got the AFL-CIO to adopt a model like ImagineBC's, that would be 14 million people saying, from now on, if you want to reach me, advertiser, here I am. Pay me fair value for my data. So they're a tough nut to crack because unions are structured so strangely. But I think if we start to get some traction and some buildup, we'll get them in because our messages are so similar. We want the same things for our members. We're doing the same thing, right? The stewardship, that gets up stewardship again. We've talked with staffing companies. I mean, they have touch points to a lot of people, and there's a new way, right? You can recruit people. I'm guilty of this myself. If I see a resume, I can profile a resume just by maybe how I'm reading it, the name on it. That's a bad practice. I try not to do it, but we have our own biases. Within our anonymous world, imagine, where I can apply for a job initially anonymously, and it would be my resume up against everybody else's resume, CV on your side of the pond. And the other side, the company wouldn't even know who I am yet. They wouldn't know until they actually get to interview me. And even better, I would get compensated to be interviewed because that's my time again. So we have an interesting opportunity with staffing companies, which brings other large communities to us. So that that combination of organized labor, staffing companies, and also social media influencers is going to give us a fairly broad swath of people to go after, very end of this year and going into the first quarter of next year.
Excellent. And as a fellow old guy that was raised on 2000 AD comics and Blade Runner movies, I must admit I find the prospect of 2020 next year quite daunting. But
I used to think, Neil, oh my God, I'll be 39 when 2000, right? Now I'm a grandfather. Yikes.
It's crazy. But as I say, heading into 2020 and beyond, I mean, can you possibly share your ultimate vision with us today and where you want to get to in the next couple of years?
Sure. So I tell people this, and ImagineBC, although we're starting here in the States, I really think we definitely want to go international. And as soon as we've gotten a foothold here in one of the, perhaps the largest consumer market in the world, we definitely want to go overseas. And that connects to your question, which is my vision. Yeah. So my vision is that one day, let's say a woman in sub-equatorial Africa who is an intellectual property owner has a great idea for, let's say, a design of a dress. Today, if she woke up this morning and had that design, her ability to take that dress to market is zero. She has virtually no chance to get that dress to market because of all the intermediary third parties involved in being able to take a product to market. Now, imagine a world like, that's why I love the company's name, ImagineBC, right? Now, imagine this world. She has this brilliant idea, and she is a member of ImagineBC. So she puts the pattern of the dress up and advertises it out to our worldwide community. So now we have, let's say, a woman in Des Moines, Iowa, who sees the dress and says, I want you to purchase this dress. And she's able to do it anonymously, doesn't even know that the maker is in sub-equatorial Africa, doesn't care. She purchases the dress for a fair price. Now, in the future, those technologies I spoke about, right? Think of the cost of production and the cost of delivery. They're going to come down dramatically. So now our woman in sub-equatorial Africa can put her pattern up for the dress and say, I have a buyer in Des Moines, Iowa, and probably a 3D printing shop within geographic, proximity to Des Moines will print that dress. An autonomous vehicle will pick it up and deliver it to the consumer. Meanwhile, our manufacturer in sub-equatorial Africa, she would have gotten 70% of the value of the price she put on that dress. She would have had to spend some part of that to have it manufactured and delivered, but not much because there's no human beings involved. But now she's got the money. She's got it anonymously. It's protected away from even a government taking over and stealing her money. That's a new world. That's our vision. Our vision is to almost go back 1,200 years, where 1,200 years ago, when we were born, lived, and died within 2 square miles, we knew everybody in town. And if Joey over there was a jerk, we didn't do business with Joey. And if Sally was a sweetheart, we did business with Sally. We want to use technology to get back to that. We don't need these middlemen. Even though the world is 25,000 miles around, we don't need them anymore. If we have a marketplace where we can trust one another based on trust and reputation scores, then we can connect directly and don't have to be the raw material of these factories any longer. That's our vision.
Beautiful. What a great moment to end on. But before I do let you go, could I ask that you remind anyone listening of where they can find you online, keep up to speed with all the latest news and developments in the project, and also contact your team if they are left with any questions?
Sure. You can always reach us at www.imaginebc.net. The .com will work too, but we like to think of ourselves more as a .net than a .com. Because, right? It's that stewardship thing too, right? Com is a company. Yes, we make money, but we only make money when you've made money. That's fair.
Absolutely love that, and your vision and what you're working towards here. So how about next year, a couple of old guys meet in 2020 and we'll talk about the developments and how you guys are getting on, because I'd love to stay in touch with you and see where this leads.
Sounds fantastic. Look forward to it, Neil.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, and I'll speak to you soon. Thanks again, Erik.
Bye-bye.
I love how ImagineBC is set to defranchise the middlemen. And by middlemen, we're talking about your Googles and Facebook, so it's an incredibly ambitious move. But a move that will allow users to capture the maximum value from their own data. And ImagineBC's business model might currently be considered revolutionary, because they're also leaving a big chunk of money on the table for the users and not for themselves. And they truly believe that the current power structure is untenable, and this new data stewardship model is the only feasible way to proceed for the businesses of tomorrow. Incredibly powerful vision there. But please, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, tweet me at Neil C. Hughes. Let me know your thoughts about everything that we've discussed in today's episode. I'm interested in your thoughts on this one, so please keep those messages coming in. And you can send the virtual voicemails, don't forget that as well, by simply just recording something on your phone and sending an email over, and we'll play that on the show. Whatever it is, my door is open to you. So a big thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.